Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to learn how to send a template email message with dynamic data using a popular template engine called EJS, which stands for Embedded JavaScript. EJS allows us to generate dynamic HTML content by embedding JavaScript code within our HTML templates. I already have a Node.js project created here on VS Code using the Node Mailer module to send emails. So let's take a look what we have here. I created an index.js file, which is going to be our main file. And inside this file, I'm importing the Node Mailer module here on the top. And here on step number 1, we need to create something called transporter by calling the Node Mailer create transport function. And inside this function, I set the service option as Gmail because we can use our personal Gmail account to send emails. And then I set the auth option with the user, which is our personal Gmail address, and the password, and both this information is stored securely in a .m file. Note that this password here is not the password of our personal Gmail account. This is a password generated to use our Gmail account services in a third-party application. If you want to learn how to generate this password, there's a video here on the channel explaining how to use your personal Gmail account to send emails using the Node Mailer module with other examples as well. I'll leave the link for this video on the description below. And here on step number 2, we're creating an object called mail options, which contains information like from, which is the email address of the sender, to, which is the email address of the recipient. It also can be an array of emails here. The subject of the email. And here we're setting the text option and sending just a simple text message without HTML and CSS. And on step number 3, we are sending the email by calling the transporter object we created on step number 1 and calling the send mail function, passing the mail options object we created on step number 2 as a first parameter. And the second parameter is a callback function which returns an error and information about the email. And inside this callback function, we're checking if there is an error. If so, we're printing the error on the console. Otherwise, we're printing a success message. So let's run this index.js file to see the result. I'll open the terminal here on the top and type node and the name of the file, which is index. Hit enter. And perfect, we got message sent successfully. Now let me open my Gmail. And here's the message, let's open. And great, as you can see, we got just a simple text message with no styles here. Back on the code, now let's send a styled HTML message using the EJS template engine, and later on the video we'll learn how to make the content more dynamic. So let's install the EJS module here on the terminal by typing npm install EJS. Hit enter. Great, module is installed, and let's say we might have multiple templates in our project, like an email template if the user just register, or to send promotions of a specific product to our users, or just to send a notification for our users. So it's a good practice to have a specific directory to store these template files. So I'll create this directory here on the root of the project, so new folder, and we'll name this folder views. But you can add the name you prefer. And inside this folder, let's create our first template file. So new file, and we'll name this welcome message.ejs. Great, so in an EJS file, we can add HTML code just like a normal HTML file. And in VS Code, if we type here HTML, and we can select this HTML column 5 option here, and VS Code will create a basic HTML template for us. And inside the body tag, I'll just write a simple template here. So I'll create an H1, and inside I'll type welcome user. And let's create a paragraph here as well with a message saying you are registered to the application. Okay, very simple. Now we need to send this template on the email instead of just sending a simple text message. So on the index.js file, I'll start by importing the EJS module on the top below the Node Mailer module import. So const EJS equals to required EJS. Okay. And below the step number 1 here, we need to tell EJS to render the welcome message EJS file we just created. So let me add a comment here saying render the EJS template. Okay, so I'll call the EJS module here, dot, and we can call the render file function. And inside this function, we need to set the path with the file name of the template file we want to render, which is inside the views folder. So here we can add an underscore dir name to return the directory where the index.js file is and the views folder as well. And then we're going to concatenate with slash the views folder and get the welcome message EJS file. So slash welcome message dot EJS. Okay, and the second parameter is a callback function which returns 2 parameters. The first one is an error object, and the second one is a string containing the content of the welcome mess EJS template file already rendered. So I'll put here template. Okay, and inside this callback function, first we're going to check if there is an error. So if error, and if there is, we're going to print on the console. So console.log error equals to the error object from the parameter. And else, if there isn't an error, we're going to send the email. So we can execute the code here from steps 2 and 3. So let me select all the code here. Okay, cut and paste inside the callback function. Okay, perfect. Let me just remove the comments up here. Okay, now instead of sending the text message using the text option here, we're going to replace with the HTML option. And here we're going to set the template string returned by the callback function, which is our EJS template file already rendered. So template here. Okay, that's it. So the EJS module is rendering our welcome message EJS file. And we're setting as an HTML message and then sending this message with the transporter object. Great, let's test these changes by opening the terminal. And let me clear here and run node index. Okay, message sent successfully. Now let's check on Gmail. So here we have the old text message without the template. Let's remove this one. And here's the new message. Let's open. And perfect. Here's the welcome message template with the H1 saying welcome user and the paragraph saying you are registered to the application. So everything is working. And we can add some styles to this message. So on the welcome message EJS file inside the head tag, I'll add the style tag here. And let's add some styles to the H1. So I'll change the color of the text to green, for example. And let's add to the paragraph as well. I'll also change the color of the text to a darker gray, like this. And let's change the font size as well to 20 pixels. Okay, let's test these changes. So on the terminal, node index. Okay, message sent, back on Gmail. So here we have the old message we sent with no styles. So let's remove this one. And here's the new message. Let's open. And perfect. As you can see, the H1 is green in the paragraph with a darker gray color and bigger than before with 20 pixels. So all good. Now we could write some HTML code directly here inside the HTML option of the mail options object, or we could point to an external HTML file, for example. But the benefit of using a template engine like EJS is the possibility of inserting dynamic data on the template. So for example, here on the welcome message EJS file, inside the H1 tag, instead of the user text here, we could show the actual username and make this template more dynamic. So what we can do is insert an output variable inside the template and tell EJS to replace this variable with some content. And the syntax to insert a dynamic content inside EJS is the less than sign, followed by the percent sign, and followed by the equal sign like this. And to close the dynamic content is the percent sign, followed by the greater than sign. And inside the syntax, we need to add the name of the variable. So I'll put here username in camel case, but you can add all with lowercase or separate by underscore. Just make sure to not add white spaces between words. Now we need to pass the content of the username variable to the welcome message template. So here on the index file, inside the render file function, we can pass an extra parameter between the path and the callback function, which is the data. And inside, an object containing all output variables we define inside the EJS template. So in our case, we only have the username variable. And I'll add John Doe here, for example. And let's test these changes by opening the terminal and type again node index. Okay, message sent, back on Gmail. So here we have the old message without the dynamic content. Let's remove this message and let's open the new message. And perfect. As you can see, now it's showing welcome John Doe, which is the username we sent to the template. Great, so we saw how easy it is to send data to the template and make the template dynamic. Now here inside the welcome message EJS file, we set the styles directly inside the template. But what if we have multiple template files and we need to set the styles to each of these template files? It would be much better if we had a single file containing all styles we need and reuse this file inside our templates. So let's move these styles here to another file. So here inside the views folder, I'll create a new file called styles.ejs. And let's select all styles from the welcome message template, including the style tag. Let's cut from here and paste inside the styles EJS file. And let me change something here so we can test and make sure it's working. So I'll remove the font size property here from the paragraph. Okay, now we need to include the styles EJS file inside the welcome message template. So here inside the head tag, EJS allows us to reuse EJS content inside another. These are considered partials. So the styles EJS file we created is a partial. And the syntax to include a partial is similar to include a variable. So it's the last and % followed by the dash sign. And to close the syntax is also greater than and the %. And inside we need to add the include function. And inside the include, the name of the partial. In our case, the styles.ejs file. And since it's in the same folder as the welcome message template, we can put just the name of the file here. Great, now let's test these changes by opening the terminal and type node index again. Okay, message sent, back on Gmail. So here we have the old message with the paragraph with font size as 20 pixels. So let's delete this message and open the new message. And great, the styles looks correct and the paragraph with the default font size. Perfect. So now we have a single file with the styles and we can reuse this file. Now we can create a separate function to send the email and make it more dynamic as well. So we can reuse in other parts of our project. So I'll create a new function below here called send email. And for the parameters, we can add the to, which is the email address we want to send, the subject of the email, the template we want to use, and the data inside the template like we set up here. And inside this function, we can select all the code we have up here for the EJS render file function. Okay, cut from here and paste inside the send email function. Now let's replace some content here according to our function parameters. So let me remove this welcome message from here because now we want to get it from the parameter. So let me format here between the views folder and the EJS extension so we can add the template parameter here. Okay, now for the data we can remove this object here and add the data parameter. Okay, good. Now inside the mail options object, we need to replace the to property here to the to parameter. And since the name of the property is the same as the parameter, so we can leave just to here, like this. And the same for the subject. Great, the HTML template we're getting from the callback function parameter as before. Okay, let me remove this comment here. Now we need to call the send email function. So down here, send email, and the first parameter, I'll just add a personal email here. So io.manfra@gmail.com. And for the subject, I'll put dynamic email template with EJS. And for the template, we could use the welcome message template we already have, but let's create a new one so we can test. So on the views folder, new file, and we'll name this one another message.ejs, for example. And inside this file, let's copy the content from the welcome message file and paste inside the another message file. And let me remove the content inside the body, and let's add a paragraph saying, for example, your access code is, and let's add inside a variable here, and we'll name this one access code. Okay, now back on the index file, we'll set the another message template here. And for the data, we'll add an object with the access code equals to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Great. Now let's test this new function here. So I'll open the terminal and run again node index. Okay, message sent, back on Gmail. So here we have the old message, which is the welcome message template. Let's remove it and open the new message. And perfect, here we have the another message EJS template. With the access code variable, we pass it to the template. So the send email function is working perfectly, and we can make this function asynchronous using the async await without using callback functions. So before the function, I'll add the async here, and I'll put a try block and a catch block with an error object inside here. And if it falls here on the catch block, let's print this error on the console. So error equals to the error object. Great, now inside the try block, so we need to store the result of this render file function inside a constant, which is the template parameter we had from the callback function here. So I'll create a new const here called template equals to await, because we need to wait for the result of this function before continuing with the code. So EJS.render file, and inside we can copy the path content we wrote here. So let me copy and paste inside here. Perfect, and as a second parameter, we need to pass the data parameter we want to send to the template. Now we're not gonna need the callback function anymore since we're running inside a synchronous function. So instead, we need to pass an option here as a third parameter called async, and we need to set to true. So now we're telling that the render file function should be asynchronous as well. And now we can continue with the code execution. So now we need to send the email using the mail options object and the transporter object. So let me copy the mail options object down here and paste after the template constant. And we're gonna call the template constant here inside the HTML property. Perfect. Now we need to send the actual email, calling the send mail function from the transporter object. So let me copy the transporter send mail function code here and paste below the mail options object here. But now since we're inside an asynchronous function, so we don't need a callback function anymore. Instead, we can add the await word here, and we can remove the callback function from inside the send mail function and just send the success message after. So let me cut from here and remove the callback function and paste the success message after the send mail function. Awesome. So now we can remove the entire code we had from before. And as you can see, it looks a lot cleaner using async await. We just need to make a few changes inside the template files. So when including a partial, the include function is asynchronous as well. So we need to add the await word before calling the include function. And on the welcome message template as well. So await before the include. Now let's just make sure all these changes we did on the send email function are working. So on the terminal, let's run again, node index. And we got an error here, cannot access template before initialization. Okay, so we have a conflict here with the template constant and the template parameter. So let me rename the constant here to HTML, so it's the same name as the HTML property. And we can leave just HTML here. Okay, perfect. Let's try again. So node index. Great, message sent successfully, back on Gmail. So here we have the old message without making the send email function asynchronous. Let's remove and open the new message, and everything is still working perfectly. But now we have an asynchronous function that we can reuse. For example, let's change here to the welcome message template. In the data, instead of the access code, we need the username variable. So username. And I'll put John Doe again. Okay, let's test. So let me just clear the terminal and run again node index. Okay, message sent, back on Gmail. Let me remove the old message and open the new message. And perfect, we got the welcome message template now with the username as John Doe. Perfect, so now we can call this function inside an express route, for example, or somewhere else inside our project. We just need to add the await word here in front of the function, and don't forget to add the await in front of the include function inside the template files as well. Great, so in this video we learned how to send email templates using the EJS template engine with dynamic data. We learned how to include partials inside a template file and also make everything asynchronous. If you want to learn how to make dynamic templates using a different template engine, we have a video here on the channel using the handlebars template engine as well. I'll leave the link for the video on the description below and also the GitHub repo link for the example as well. Hope this video was useful to you, and if it was, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel so we can continue making more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you in the next video.